March 17th, 2026, St. Patrick's Day. Weather said that it was supposed to rain. 2 days prior, forecast was giving us an 85% chance of a miserable combination between rain and wind, but instead we got lucky. Bright sun, clear skies, still incredibly windy though. Now it's important to note that certain events kind of carry their own energy with them, right? But when the light cooperates, it's just so nice. It just makes everything so much easier. And unlike the Thanksgiving Day parade, which feels, a little bit more organized in a sense, it kind of feels like a civic obligation, kind of paired with, the sponsored balloons and the mix of children that are too young to remember anything that's going to happen, even though the family spent a year's worth of money saving up for this moment for a 4-year-old to stand next to a bunch of people crammed in like sardines, just for them to not remember what the parade was like in a year or so. The St. Patrick's Day parade belongs to a different species entirely. It's like for one day, Fifth Avenue stops being a corridor of wealth and people filling the streets pretending that they live here, taking photos in front of luxury stores. And it becomes something different entirely. It becomes kind of like a corridor of tradition. It becomes filled with just enough disorder to remind you that New York, beneath all of that polish, still belongs to the people. And this was my day photographing it. Hi, my name is Jared Thomas Tapey. I'm a social documentary photographer and educator here in New York City, and you're watching my YouTube channel. Now, I made one of these types of videos a couple weeks ago documenting the life behind a photojournalist here in New York City, covering protests. I went to 2 separate protests and I brought the camera along with me to kind of document and showcase what that process looks like. And so I wanted to do something similar because, one, for my own archives, I think it'll be interesting to be able to look back years from now and see what I was doing. And then 2, a lot of people found it very interesting about the behind the scenes of what goes on and how I shoot and what it looks like to be a photojournalist in the city. I also thought that this would be interesting because it's a different aspect of photojournalism than, protest work. There's so many different multifaceted things that a photojournalist can cover, everything from regular press briefings to spot news and events and community gatherings and protests and parades. Across my social media platforms, I created 5 segments, all of which pertain to certain aspects of photography. I have crafting a photograph, life through the lens, marks of the maker, the creative connection, and tools of the trade. So I wanted to kind of dive deeper into what it looks like to photograph a planned event like this, where you know where everything is going to be and what to expect for the most part, and how to conduct yourself as a photojournalist to get the entire story. In addition to my own online work that I do and my own bodies of work that I produce, I'm also the archivist at the Jill Friedman Estate, working on curating and creating a more full-bodied archive while still doing social media for them as well. And that's important. It's not a flex because it's kind of like the whole reason why I wanted to start doing this segment titled Field Notes. Basically, what my goal is for this is to be able to create archival posts of my process of shooting throughout my career, whether it be regular street work, photojournalism work, or anything else that requires a camera, so that I can go back and see how I was feeling, what I was doing, how I was thinking, and what I was shooting. I found this out by going through Jill's archives, where she had notes on a lot of the work that she did, talking about her experiences, the current political climate, things that she saw throughout the day, what she photographed, how she was feeling, and it made me feel like I should do something similar to that because I care very deeply about the work that I create. So as much as this is a video for online use and everything like that, it's also for me to be able to look back 20 years from now and see where I was at. So I guess without further ado, let's get into the day. So I started the day off early, around 6 a.m. that morning with a fresh pot of Cafe Bustelo and a nice little Marlboro Light. and that cold morning wind was whipping overhead. But before I even started thinking about the day, I did some work for the Jill Friedman estate for their social medias. If you don't know, Jill has 2 books on Ireland, where she shot in the 1970s after her first visit in the 1960s when she was a singer. She came back in 1974, I believe, and started a book called Ireland Ever, where she documented the quieter moments of Ireland. So I made a post about that and shared it on our social media. I didn't really have much to think about that day because I'd already done so much preparation prior to the day. I'd already gone to a nice film club here in Brooklyn to drop off film a couple of days ago. Then I picked up some fresh rolls and stocked up for the day. What I had on me was pretty standard for how I work. I usually have about 4 cameras on me anywhere I go. Whenever I'm doing photojournalism, if I'm only out doing work for my own, I'll only carry 3. But the 4 cameras I had were my Nikon f4 with a 50mm lens, a Canon f1 with a 28mm lens, my Rolleiflex 3.5f, and then since I'm doing photojournalistic work today, I had my Nikon D850 with my 18x300mm Sigma lens. And for film stocks, I chose Kodak Ultramax 400, Cinestill 800T, and Ilford Delta 400. Now, I've been asked quite often why I carry so many cameras with me, and it's usually either people that are kind of genuinely concerned for my spine, which is totally, I understand, or it's kind of like condescending people kind of quietly judging me, thinking that I'm indecisive because I have all these cameras on me, or that, you know, I'm trying too hard, or that I don't take the work seriously enough because I'm not sticking with one camera, that I'm kind of like a pick-me because I have all my gear on me. But the honest answer is that I've never really had a clean explanation for those people. For me, it's more like an instinct. It's just what I like. It's what I prefer to have on me. You know, it's definitely a habit, because I remember specifically last summer walking around with 4 cameras or 3 cameras, walking around like 20 miles a day shooting for the book. And I remember being exhausted by the end of the day and just thinking like, what the fuck am I doing with 4 cameras around me at all times? And I'm sweaty and all the straps hurt my neck and my back and all of my cracks, and I gotta slim this down. And then that just kind of never happened. I think it's because I've always had an affinity towards film. I really enjoy the fact that it works physically. I love being able to look at a contact sheet and see and study my contact sheets to see, you know, what I missed, what I can improve upon. I can go back and archive all of them physically. I can hold it, it's tangible. I like the physicality of film. I love being able to print my work from a negative, going into the lab over at Nice Film Club and talking with Ian Schiff, who's their printmaker. You know, being able to have that sort of community really only comes from shooting on film. It doesn't happen as often with digital, and there's a big difference between looking at a file and looking at a negative. And so I've always operated with this sort of affinity towards film. And in my own head, and I think it's the thing that confuses a lot of people that are asking me why I carry so many cameras with me, is because each one has a specific purpose, right? The Canon f1 with the 28mm lens usually gets black and white. I don't really know how to explain why, but it just kind of feels like she deserves black and white. The Nikon f4 usually gets color. Again, I don't really know why, it just feels like she deserves color more than black and white. The Rolleiflex 3.5f usually kind of differs between black and white and color, but kind of leans more towards black and white. I think it's because my favorite photographer is Vivian Meyer, and she shot a lot of black and white. She shot color too, but I just kind of feel like she deserves black and white a little bit more than she deserves color, but I'm willing to go back and forth. And then the Nikon is usually whatever, you know, it doesn't shoot in just black and white, it shoots in color, so whatever I feel in post is what it deserves. Now again, I think one of the things that really throws people off about why I shoot with so many different cameras is because they're assuming that I'm shooting them constantly, like one right after another, meaning like I'm switching back and forth between them. That's not the case. I think that that's what people mean when they talk about inconvenience and having really no idea what you're doing. But instead, what I do is I shoot one camera at a time, because each one has certain limitations, whether that be because of the color film grade that I'm using or the F4 has an autofocus system that the F1 does not have. The lenses are different for each of them. So each of them have a very specific purpose, and I like to use one camera after another, completing a full roll of film before I switch off to a different camera, unless, I have the time in a scene to work the scene and use multiple cameras. Now, for a really long time, I really hated shooting in black and white. If you look back at a lot of my older work, you're not going to see a lot of black and white work. And I think that as I was growing up, that really had to do with my synesthesia. I see color all of the time, kind of like this behind me, except more hues going in and out of my vision at all times. So seeing the world in black and white was really hard for me to do when I was younger. Color was just sort of the natural state of the world for me, so stripping that away kind of felt unnatural. Almost as if I was stripping away a part of the experience of shooting that I was kind of used to. But even now, I still primarily shoot in color. That's just still the way that I kind of think about things. I've just come to appreciate the novelty of black and white and understanding that when you strip away color, you really have to focus on your shadows, form, your composition, and it really takes away what I find that I rely on a lot. Now, back to the purist thing, that doesn't mean that black and white is better or that color is better. They're different and they offer different things. And I'm just now in my process of this whole photographic journey, really learning to understand and appreciate what black and white can give to a scene that color can't. So to get to the actual parade, I knew that the parade stepped off at 11 a.m., which meant that I needed to get there by 10 a.m. I'm often asked in comments or in DMs, what's something that you can give advice about to new photojournalists that are just looking to get into the entry-level position. And the number one thing that I always mention is the act of showing up early to whatever your event is. So if you're new to this, get there early. Arriving on the scene early offers you a lot of different things, a lot of great opportunities. First and foremost, it allows you time to think. You don't have to rush in and start immediately shooting, right? That's a little bit chaotic sometimes. Second is that it allows you to scout the scene, especially in cases like parades, where everything is going to be contained. There is a route that's going to take shape. It's not out in the open. There's barricades around. People are already settling in. It's super, super helpful to get there early so that you can scout your positions and cover all your bases. This gives you the opportunity to do something very important, which is understanding the conditions in which you're going to be shooting. So for instance, for this, when I got there, I walked the route of the 5th Avenue parade, which I'm on 5th Avenue all the time, but I still wanted to see where light was going to fall as the day moved forward, where some of the more impactful backgrounds might be, get a sense for what the crowd is like already. And knowing that it's going to change throughout the day and get busier, it's better to understand these things early. That way, as time moves on, things get more chaotic. You have the opportunity to ensure that you have certain checkpoints where you know that good photographs can be made. Now, the parade started on 44th and 5th, so I got out at 42nd Times Square and walked over from Times Square over to 5th Ave. And I gotta be honest, it was super quiet at Times Square, which I wasn't really expecting because there's a lot of Irish pubs around that area. It was very quiet. It was a little bit off-putting. However, what I soon found out was that everybody and their mother thought that they could enter into the parade that's on 5th Avenue at 5th Avenue, which doesn't make any sense. And they were all being turned away, obviously, because the parade's on 5th Avenue. So there was a flurry of people exiting towards 6th and then exiting the other way towards Madison Avenue to then walk around and get on 5th Avenue's sidewalks. But it was within that moment as I was walking to 5th that I took the first photographs of the day. I saw a group of high school band kids coming out of their bus and they were all super excited. You could tell that they were energized by the people already around them. They were practicing on their instruments and running scales. And so I stopped to take a couple photographs of some of the kids, just pumped up and ready to go for the parade. And I don't know, I know that these couple of photographs aren't like bangers, you know, they're not fantastic pieces of journalism. And I think that this might just be a little bit more of like the street photography aspect of me, where I care about moments like this. But there's something that I've come to realize in my grand old age of 25, and it's that I truly appreciate the innocence of childhood now that, you know, I no longer have that option. And seeing these, you know, high school kids be so excited about this opportunity in front of them and the energy of the city. And I'm sure most of them traveled in from different places around the country or around New York, and this was going to be their first time performing in a huge parade like this. I don't know, I got a little sentimental, and I just thought about, you know, this is such a pivotal moment in these kids' lives, and I want to document that, and I think that that's super cool. I'm a big sucker for, I don't know, I don't think that anybody should have the ability to take away the innocence of children and the joys of childhood. And so I got a little sentimental, and I took a couple photos of them, and I don't know. That's my 2 cents. Now, obviously, the biggest perk of being a photojournalist, it's this guy right here, your press pass. It gets you into places regular people simply cannot access, obviously. And it's usually a very seamless transaction. Case in point, I walk down 5th Avenue, come up to the barricades, me and a couple other press photographers are walking side by side. We show our press passes. A very kind NYPD officer lets us right in. Barely checks half the time, but nonetheless. But it was as soon as I entered into the parade premise that I realized that this was not the Thanksgiving Day parade whatsoever. Let me give you a little bit of context. The Thanksgiving Day parade, yes, it's huge, it's large, there's so much stuff going on, there's floats and people holding the floats and everything happening all at once. But it still feels very organized. There's a lot of people on the street, yeah, but it's not like this.
Stay together. Our little hair bag.
I mean, there was people everywhere. There were band kids everywhere, students and teachers and old men in St. Patrick's Day sashes and performers and pipes and drums, bagpipers and every single possible kilt you could possibly imagine, There were official people, unofficial people, press photographers, press videographers, news stations. There were people that looked like they just spawned into existence 3 seconds ago. It was dense, it was loud, it was slightly absurd, it was every single type of service member you could possibly imagine, but oh so very alive. Now, in one of my last videos about photojournalism, I talked about a principle called EDFAT, which is one of those frameworks that photojournalists can use to ensure that they get the entirety of the story. And the first part of EDFAT is E, which stands for entire, which basically just means wide shots, right? Getting the scale of the entire scene. This was not possible. There was no eye lines anywhere. People were going left and right. Everybody was on equal footing ground. There was no possibility of making an entire shot in this moment. It was all build up and anticipation and compression of bodies left and right. So I did what I normally do in these moments. I walked. I circled the scene and I just watched. And I used a practice that I do whenever I start off my days shooting for my book, just doing normal street photography, which is removing myself from the situation for about 10 minutes and just watching. I'm pretty sure I learned this from Joel Meyerowitz in one of his books or maybe one of his interviews, but he talked about the idea of sitting at a corner and watching the way that the streets work for about 10 minutes so that you can anticipate the rhythm. I've found this very helpful in my own personal work, and I use it in moments that I have the time whenever I'm working in photojournalism, because of course you're not always going to have that time, but I got there an hour early, so I had all the time in the world. After observing for a while, I went back into the crowd and got a few initial shots off that, and some of them ended up a little bit blurry, but I don't care. I don't really mind. After I started shooting around there for a little bit, I knew that I needed to kind of distance myself from that rush of things for a moment and really get my grounds. So I moved past the initial staging area and I found where the initial starting point of the parade was going to be. And at the start of the parade was a horse-mounted unit of NYPD officers. And if you've never really stood next to one of those NYPD horses, Let me be the first to tell you they're much different than the horses that carry those buggies in Central Park that die of dehydration in the middle of summer that I'm not really a fan of. The scale of these thoroughbreds was much bigger than I anticipated because, hey, I don't spend a lot of time around horses. I wasn't really prepared for how large they were. Again, I had all the time in the world, so I really spent some time working the scene. I was recently asked in a live how you go about working a scene as a photojournalist, and oftentimes you don't really get the opportunity to truthfully, work the scene. A lot of it is snap moments and things happen quickly, but with things like parades and everything like that, like I said, if you get there early, you got all the time in the world to really work a scene. So what that looks like for me, going through EdFat, getting entire shots, getting detail shots, it allows me the opportunity to do something that I don't normally get to do once things pick up, which is switch camera bodies with different film rolls, right? So I'm able to shoot some in color, I'm able to get some more closer detail shots in color, then get a wider range using the 28mm and take some black and white shots, really just kind of circling around these horses and these officers for about 10-15 minutes, changing my perspective and framing and trying to find something that works for that scene the best. And as I was doing that, one of these horses decided that, when you gotta go, you gotta go. I swear to God, it felt like he was pissing for 10 minutes straight, and the smell of ammonia just entered into my lungs, and I was like, I think that I've worked this scene just enough. I don't need to smell this pee anymore.
Is this where everybody's coming out at?
More than likely, yeah.
Okay.
We got to reapply.
That's a lot of people.
Oh, yeah.
I know. This feels a little bit more crazier than Thanksgiving.
Yes, I bet it's
Less organized, but probably Thanksgiving has more people.
more people. This is just a lot more agencies. We'll have
Yeah.
presence here.
Take a photo over there.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Beautiful.
Thank you, sir. Yeah. Whoa. Everybody coming at once.
Eventually, boom, the parade starts, the drums kick off, and like I said, that energy on the avenue completely shifts. The crowds start to roar, the marches begin, and suddenly all that anticipation had somewhere to go. At the start, I focused mostly on the crowds because I knew that this parade was from 11 to 4:30 p.m. There's going to be a lot of moments within the parade that were going to be worth photographs, and so I wanted to take some time to understand what the crowd was going to be like once everything kicked off. The people pressed up against the left side of the avenue against the barriers were facing the sunlight directly, so that's the side that I went on first. And as I was walking up the avenue, 2 FDNY officers were trying to jump over the barrier because I guess they didn't make it to their starting point at time. So I snapped off a photograph of that, of them trying to jump over the barrier, and then turned around so that I could see the entirety of the crowd and noticed that there was a multi-layered frame in front of me of people on the barriers, people on the sidewalk, and then people standing in the construction site on top of the fence trying to watch the parade. And I thought that that was a great moment. And I mean, these are all just sort of the kind of small little visual gifts that kind of pop up if you're paying attention to the people around you. And really, for the first portion of a lot of this start to the parade, I was only focused on the crowd work. I ended up taking a few shots of people in the parade, but it wasn't really my main focus. I really wanted to ensure that I got some good establishing shots of what the crowd was like as the energy was super high. I got to one of my checkpoints that I made for myself where I told myself that I would turn back around. And I want to bring up something here that's really important that I've learned from a book, How I Make Photographs, Daido Moriyama by Takeshi Nakamoto. And in the book, he's describing the ways in which Daido Moriyama works. If you don't know who he is, he's a very influential and very amazing street photographer photographing post-World War II Japan. And in the book, Moriyama describes the ways in which he works a street and works a scene, which is photographing a street one way and then turning around and photographing the same street the way back. And the reason why he does this is because things change, right? The light changes, your perspective changes, the scene changes, the people change. See the street from a new perspective gives you the opportunity to get different shots. Now, all of these things change, yes, but they're exterior, they're not you. What really happens on your second go around is that you change. Often, the first pass that you make is about understanding, but the second pass should be about response. Now, I think that this matters because a lot of photographers, especially street photographers, are obsessed with the idea that the next block over is going to have that magic moment that you're waiting for. That's bullshit. That isn't real. Usually, the work that you're looking for is right in front of you. You just haven't stayed with that long enough for the scene to change and for you to change. Walking the same street twice and walking the same scene twice allows you the opportunity to let the novelty wear off so that you start noticing differences. And it was in that second pass that I made some of my, not favorite images, but some rather good images. I think one of the more impactful moments of the day, again because I'm so sentimental in my old age, is that I had noticed that there was this little girl who had her camera with her. She was probably about, I don't know, 8 years old, and she had a cute little Olympus camera with her, and she was snuggled up right next to the barrier. And I went over there, I photographed her, and her brother was looking at me all weird, that looked younger than her, like, why aren't you taking my photograph? But I could care less about that kid. This little girl was so enthralled with the parade around her, getting her shots off, and I thought that that was adorable. The mother was thrilled. Her and I had a quick conversation about when she started photography, and I mean, she started photography around the same time that I did, at 6 years old. And I don't know, I feel so much of what I do here on all of my social media platforms is try and help people understand their own unique vision and voice, because I care about this medium so deeply and I love this medium. and it's provided me with so much, I guess, life. And I just couldn't help myself but think that this girl is probably almost 20 years younger than me. And, you know, if she sticks with it and she finds passion in it, she'll be the next generation of photographers using her voice to do something with the medium. And so I felt like a sense of responsibility to tell her that she should keep shooting and that she can do anything that she wants and to enjoy the process, and told her mom the same thing. And we talked for a brief moment, and then I continued working. By this point, I had walked up and down Fifth Avenue a couple times already to my first checkpoints there and back, photographing the crowds again, getting some more images of people within the parade, and I found myself at the start of the parade once more.
Thank you.
Jared, right?
Yeah, man.
I'm Zephyr. Zephyr, nice to meet you. You know.
And at the start of the parade, preparing to step onto Fifth Avenue was FDNY. And when they did, it felt like everything changed. The sheer volume alone felt like it could rattle the windows from the surrounding buildings. The crowd's reaction shifted almost immediately. And I'll admit, I might be kind of biased towards the FDNY. My father-in-law was in the fire department for 30 years, and he was battalion chief of his unit. And for the entirety of me and Sophie's relationship, I've thought about this man as a hero basically all the time. He is kind of like the epitome of what I would like to be if I even had a fraction of his courage. I revere that man in a way that I probably don't articulate enough, and I don't know if it's because he probably would just tell me to shut the fuck up anyways if I did revere him in that way, because to him it's just a way of life, but to me it's always been something much more. And so I view firefighting and, you know, firefighters all in the same way. So that's basically just me stating that I did come into this scene with a little bit of emotional orientation already built in. But even if I didn't, I think that I'm not alone in the way that I think about FDNY, because the crowd's difference between when NYPD was walking and when FDNY was walking was a big difference. And it didn't just feel like a parade unit, because first of all, every single department shows up for this parade. Every single unit of different types of firefighters for the city of New York and its surrounding boroughs show up. And so it kind of felt emotionally like the city was showing up for itself. You could tell that there was real love in the crowd for these service members. There was family members and old friends, and the vibe between the firefighters was so much different. They were all yelling at each other and making jokes, and they were standing on the sidelines cheering each other on, and I don't know, it was just the feeling behind it felt palpable. The energy, you could just feel it coursing through that avenue. It didn't feel like some sort of public performance or anything like that. It felt like family, like Fast and Furious type of family. I had two very distinct photographs in mind that I thought about when I was first working the scene when I arrived at the parade. One of them was that I wanted a good photograph of people playing the bagpipes with the Empire State Building in the background. So I knew that I had to be on the right side of the street because the Empire State Building was on the left side of the street, and I had to get down low and make sure that I get the frame right. I ended up getting that shot. And the second was a little bit further down the avenue where there was an I Heart New York City gift shop. I wanted to get that sign in the middle of them marching. So I moved down the block, made sure that I got to the right spot, and took the shot. Then I started working the scene. And this is where the day kind of took more of like an emotional toll on me, because it was within these moments of walking with the FDNY. I mean, I walked with them for the longest period of time. I walked with them basically down the entire avenue, and I kept up with them, got the crowd's reactions, got their reactions, people embracing down the route. I mean, there's two photographs that I took of, it seemed as if two buddies that hadn't seen each other in a long time, and they hugged each other, and the one looked over to his left and pointed out his kid that was walking with him and was like, "That's my kid right there, that's my kid right there." And then they just embraced and walked away. I saw another one of, it looked like family members screaming after one of the service members, and they were so happy, you know, and they ran towards one another and hugged each other over the barrier, and I don't know, I just got emotionally attached.
Well, we just walked around again. Walk, right? Hey, yo, what's up? Mikey, what's up?
Yeah, you're the gatekeeper. Recently. Yeah!
No, I'm not. I'm literally.
He's like you.
No, I am very aware of other people around me.
I know
No
I'm
way.
busting your chops. Here's a good guy, best guy.
How you doing?
Oh, there you go. Hey, how you doing? Jeff, nice to meet you.
Thanks, man. What's your name?
Jamal.
Where are you from?
Ridgewood.
Ridgewood. So low key swing.
Yeah, like
I'm on the Brooklyn side.
Waterloo.
Yeah.
I kind of called it quits after 59th and I started to walk back, but all of the service members were still walking that were part of the FDNY. So I took my time walking back on the left-hand side. And I think that that's when I got two of my favorite shots from the day. One of which was a very tall and lanky firefighter walking in the parade with his daughter that had taken his coat that was 3 sizes too big for her, holding hands, but not really holding hands because he was holding the sleeve of his jacket. I thought that that was a great moment. And then as I walked back down 5th Avenue, there was a single straggler that got left behind in the pack and he came sprinting up the avenue. I saw him running and so I prepared and I got low and we made eye contact with one another. And then as we made eye contact with one another and he saw that I was about to take the photograph, he started laughing to himself and he was like, "Oh man, you got me, dude." And I took the photograph and he kept sprinting on to catch up with his buddies. Both of those photographs I really enjoy.
Nice photo.
It was one of those rare stretches of time where the work, the energy, and the feeling of being exactly where you're supposed to be kind of all lined up. And I feel like those moments are rare enough that when they happen, you really feel them. And that feeling kind of clouded my judgment a little bit because it was after this point that I forgot to click record on any more video that I was taking throughout the day. My phone was fully alive, I had plenty of battery left. I think that I was just so wrapped up in the moment that I forgot to record anything else. But I think it's fine because in all honesty, eventually I had to admit something very humbling, that I was getting quite tired. I stuck it out though. I walked all the way back to the start of the parade and I photographed the new corrections officers that had recently graduated coming out into the parade, photographing them and their fellow officers that seemed older than them, that might have been, I don't know, teachers or something like that. I photographed them, did some more crowd work, and then walked all the way back up to St. Patrick's Cathedral to take more pictures of people in the crowd. But at this point, brother, I had walked 8.5 miles. I had 4 cameras on me the whole time. I had run through all of my film. There was about an hour left in the parade, but after these people passed, I knew that all it was going to be was more and more high school bands performing. And there's only so much difference that those photographs can make to where it just becomes repetitive. And guys, I'm talking neck, back, crack, feet, everything started to hurt a little bit. You know what I mean? I could start to feel the weight of the day. So I shoved off to Madison Avenue. Not to mention, I didn't make the best decisions that morning. I haven't drank any water the whole day. I hadn't eaten anything the whole day. And I gotta be honest, after 8.5 miles and 4 cameras and all the photographs that I was taking, I wanted a little cigarette, you know what I mean? I'd been craving one. I felt like I deserved one after all of that time, and it seemed as if the people in the crowd didn't mind either. They were all smoking their hoagies and thins, having a grand old time, drinking. I wanted to participate in that, and yet I couldn't, because as I got onto Madison, it was filled with all of those high school band kids that I was telling you about. That's where all of them were, and I'd like to believe that I'm a decent person, and I care about the health of young ones. So I held off because I'm a good person sometimes. And also the fact that there was still so much going on, I felt like I wasn't allowed to have a break yet, because it was within those moments that I took one of my favorite photographs of the day, which was high school band kids running after one another between Park Ave in the middle of the street with their instruments. I felt like after I took that, I could call it quits for the day. So I walked down to Park Ave and then walked my way back to 42nd Street and Bryant Park. I nearly had a physical altercation with my cigarette because it wasn't lighting. I ducked off into a little cubby, and the lighter wasn't working for a solid what felt like 5 years. And then eventually, after some manipulation and coaxing, it lit the cigarette, and the nicotine did exactly what I needed it to after 8.5 miles and 4 cameras and all of the loud bagpipes and all of the noise and walking back and forth and being on for 24/7. And then I finally got to the subway station, right? Bryant Park Station, to get to the F train where I got in at, right at the public library, it's at least a mile to get to the F train because you have to take the 7 train if you're right there. Who takes the 7 train, dude? Put the F right there. I walked all the way down to the F, and I can only imagine that the people that passed by me probably thought that I was ready to collapse at any given moment. And I felt like I was. I get down to the platform where the F is, and immediately I'm greeted by about 8 different FDNY members, all rowdy, all having a great time. I think that they just walked the parade. They were bouncing off the walls on one another, and so I snapped off a couple shots of them on the platform and getting on the train before I slumped into an open seat on the F train. And I felt like I could have closed my eyes right there and gone to bed. And the whole time I was thinking about the fact that I should probably go drop this film off at NYPD. It was about 3:30 p.m., which meant that I only had 2.5 hours until they were closed. And I knew that if I got there before 4, they could do a rush order and develop my film, but I really was not feeling it. Oh my God, I wanted to go home and take a shower because I smelled like, hey, 10 cans of Bounce That Ass. And then I was hungry, I was thirsty, but then New York City kind of had different plans, right? I was extremely tired. When we got to 6th and 14th, I realized that I played myself. Yeah, I was photographing those FDNY members and didn't realize that I got in on the F train at the completely wrong side of the station. So quite literally, the entrance to the L train
is all the way down the platform.
And I kind of took that personally. I think that I was being a little bit, sassy, and I was being, taking things a little too personally. And I was fed up and I was tired, and I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna, if that's how things want to treat me, then whatever. I'll just go to Nice Film Club. I walk all the way down only to be met with the fact that the next L train coming was going to be in 9 minutes. 9 minutes? There's only one other station. 8th Ave is the last stop on the train. I'm on 6th Ave. What are we doing here? Then, the reason why I went to 6th Ave in the first place and why I always go there, because going to Union Square is a nightmare all the time, is that usually when you get on at 6th Ave, there's some spots to sit, man. It's groovy. You can get on, not have to worry about being packed in there like sardines, squished between two backpacks like your carry-on luggage. It's a great vibe. No. The train pulls up well after 9 minutes, by the way, because it's never right. The train is full, dude.
It's packed to the brim.
I squeeze on there with my 4 cameras, just trying to like briefly find some sort of reprieve and maybe I'll be able to stand against the door. The whole time I'm suckered in between 2 very large men. In my head, I'm like, I'm going home, dude. I'm just going home. And then I was going back and forth between the fact that I'm 25 years old and I need to act responsible and I have to go get this film developed because I need to do things with it. And so I got off at Williamsburg and Bedford Ave, which if you know anything about me, you know that Williamsburg is not my favorite place to be in the world. I felt like I had got transported directly back into 5th Avenue. It's just luxury store after luxury store and all of the different chain coffee restaurants you could possibly imagine, filled with people that don't go above 59th Street in Midtown if you fucking ask them to, and definitely don't go anywhere outside of their own neighborhood in Williamsburg. It's my least favorite place to be in Brooklyn, right? I love Nice Film Club. They're great. All the people are wonderful. Wish they weren't located there. Gotta be honest. But I digress. I walk myself to Nice Film Club. I walk into the room and I sling myself onto the nearest bench, taking all of my cameras off because it feels as if I have a refrigerator hanging on my neck. I take off my big jacket. I sit down. I drop off a couple rolls of film and I'm sitting there talking to the people that work at Nice Film Club, all lovely people, but the only thing that I can think about is I'm gonna Uber home, bro. I'll spend $45 right now not to have to walk anymore. And I know that the car ride is gonna be a lot longer than it takes to get on the train and walk, but I physically cannot do it anymore. In walks Johnny Boy, one of my friends that works at Nice. And he's talking about how he's been fasting for Ramadan this whole month. And I asked him what he's going to do when Ramadan finishes and what he's looking forward to. You know what he tells me? I can't wait to drink water. So here I am, complaining about being thirsty and being hungry and being tired. And Johnny's excited to drink water after barely having any. I don't even know if he had any at all. I'm sure he probably had a sip or two. So immediately I shut up and I take my happy ass back to the L train and come home. Now you may be thinking, Jared, the story's got to be over by now, right? There's not even any more photos involved. I have to tell you about this because it's about the repercussions of my own actions. I get back to the apartment. I'm greeted by Sophie and my 2 cats, Milo and Augustus. There's a little story time now between myself. So if you want to clock out, clock out. I'm going to have something inspirational to say about shooting in New York City after this. I've already got it in my head. I'm walking home from the train station and I start doing the equivalent of what Bluetoothing is. If you don't know what Bluetoothing is, it's essentially that moment when you really got to use the restroom, right? You really got to go. And as you approach your destination where you know that you can securely and safely do your business, it feels as if it gets worse. And so the closer that you get to home, the more you gotta go. And, you burst through the doors and you're like frantic and you're trying your hardest to hold everything in and you finally get to the toilet. And unfortunately, the belt that you're wearing for some reason decides that it's a triple lock and you can't get it off and your hands are shaking and you're 25 years old and you're thinking, oh my God, this is the moment I'm about to shit my pants and I can't get anything undone. And then you unfasten you unfasten your seatbelt by the grace of some miracle, right? And you sit down and then nothing happens the way that you expected it to. Right. I had that, but pain. Everything in my body, dude, started to hurt. My feet, which are a size 15 and are the world's flattest feet in the world, felt like blocks of Velveeta cheese melting into themselves. My back was hurting, my neck was hurting. I was in pain, brother. I hadn't eaten anything still. I still haven't had a drink of water. I'm back to feeling sorry about myself and I'm complaining. I walk through the door, I sit down, I unload all of the camera straps off of me like I'm Wolverine coming out of the water in the first movie, just right? I sit down, Sophie, and I have a quick conversation. I immediately tell her,
My tummy hurts.
what does she do since she's such a great girlfriend? She gets me an onion bagel that we had. She toasts it. I demolished this thing. Both pieces, 30 seconds flat, easily. Stood no chance. Now, if you're a medical professional or somebody with some common sense, you know that, hey, you shouldn't just gorge yourself with food if you're that hungry and that dehydrated. I didn't want to hear it. I did it. Repercussions of my own actions, inbound. All of a sudden, everything starts to hurt in ways that I can't even begin to describe to you. I'm bloating in ways that I didn't even know were possible. I strip myself of all of my exterior clothes, leaving only the stinky thermals that I was in all day and Sophie's green high socks that I had to wear today since it was St. Patrick's Day. She makes me a ginger root tea that's supposed to help with dehydration and bloating. I don't even drink it, dude. I fall asleep on the couch in the fetal position with a heated blanket over my tummy. Enter picture right here. I knock out for the next 2 hours, dude. 2 hours, I'm down for the count. I wake up a couple hours later. The film has already been developed. Straight to my inbox on the Nice Film Club app. I download everything and start the culling process, editing all of my photos. I just felt like I needed to share that with you. And by you, I don't even know if you're watching. I'm talking to myself right now. Don't do that again. I cull through all the images. Don't even take a shower, dude. Just go straight to bed afterwards. I'm still stinky and dirty. I've been out on the subway all day. I take all my clothes off, throw on some PJs, and I'm out like a light. To reiterate, don't do that again. Now, in all seriousness, when I think about the day as a whole, it's hard to isolate one moment from the rest, because it really felt like it wasn't just a parade. It was everything around it. The walking, the waiting, the people, the fatigue, the little interactions that stitched all those moments together. And what days like this remind me of is something that I've said before, and it's that the act of photography isn't just about taking pictures. It's about paying attention, about actively participating and being present in a city that doesn't wait for you, one that doesn't slow down for you, and that once in a while, if you're in it for long enough and you respect it long enough, if you move at the right rhythm, the city lets you see something real. And that makes me feel extremely lucky to be able to do what I do. I feel extremely lucky to be the person that I am and be the photographer that I am, and the opportunity that I have to document things going on in this world and in this city during this current moment of time. It feels like a privilege, a real one, and it's a responsibility. It's like that Uncle Ben saying, with great power comes great responsibility, but with great privilege comes great responsibility. It's taught me that having a camera doesn't give you authority. It just gives you access. What you do with that access matters. Days like this remind me why I keep carrying all these cameras, why I keep walking the miles and miles on end, why I keep returning to this work even after it leaves me broken in half on the couch for the next 2 hours. Because every once in a while, in the middle of all of that noise and repetition and exhaustion, I remember exactly why I fell in love with this in the first place. Alright guys, that's going to be it for the video today. Thank you so much for joining me on another behind the scenes look of what it looks like working as a photojournalist, and joining me on this first episode of Field Notes. I know I probably talked your ear off, but again, this is more so for me than anything else down the road to look at future archives. But I hope that it was at least informational, helpful, educational in the ways that I think about photojournalism and think about the world and some of the things that I do whenever I'm covering events like this. I had a lot of fun, obviously, recording this video and taking the photographs, and I just hope that I can be of use. I appreciate all of the support that I've been getting recently. It's been really validating in a certain sense that I haven't really felt before, for people to want this type of content and this type of education more in a longer form scale. So I really appreciate it. You can find me on Instagram at Jared Tapey. You can find me on TikTok at Jared Thomas Tapey _. You can find a coordinating article with this video on my Substack at The Creative Connection, then obviously here on YouTube. And I think the only thing left to do is get out there and get shooting. So thank you, and I'll catch you on the next one.